Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the January 5th, 2016 VISTA Planning Commission meeting. Commissioner Garrettson, will you lead us through the pledge, please?
Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Turley, will you take the call to roll, please?
Commissioner Carroll.
Here.
Chairman Kramer.
Here.
Commissioner Fleming.
Here.
Commissioner Garrettson. Here. Commissioner Jekyll. That's you. Sorry. Commissioner Rosler. Commissioner Looney.
Here.
Student Commissioner Rudebush. And Student Commissioner Acevedo. Thank you. All present.
Thank you. Commissioners, before you, you have the minutes from our December 15th, 2015 Planning Commission meetings. Are there any changes to those minutes? If none, can I have a motion, please? Commissioner Fleming?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Garrettson?
I would second the motion.
Ms. Turley, may we vote? Thank you. Please let the record show that the minutes from the December 15th, 2015 meeting passed with no changes. Thank you. Ms. Chow, are there any agenda changes this evening?
Good evening, Chairman Kramer. No changes tonight.
Thank you. All right, before we begin our early design review, is there anyone here who wishes to speak on any item that is not on this evening's agenda? I don't. If you did, you'd be required this in the same fashion to fill out a speaker slip, but seeing none, we will proceed. Ms. Chow, can you lead us through item P15-0858, please?
Certainly. Good evening, Chairman Kramer, Planning Commissioners, Patsy Chow, City Planner. First off, Happy New Year. The first item on the agenda end of the year is actually regarding our early design review for Vista Village Creekside. This particular proposal, it involves development of 41 apartment units on approximately 1.28 acre site that's located just south of the Wave Water Park. The site is currently found as being vacant. It's been previously pad graded. There are a total of 4 buildings that are being proposed. They are 2- and 3-story buildings combination. There will be also associated site improvements such as parking, passive and active recreation areas, private yard areas for the units. It is also adjacent to the Creekside Park, and I should point out that there's a separate parcel J, which is part of the project and would actually accommodate visitor parking as well as a lookout area. So taking a look at the project site, parcels identified as 1-2, which is the 1.28 acre site where the units, the 41 units will be located on. And then there's also parcel number 3, which is also known as parcel J across the creek, and that's where the visitor parking would be with the lookout area. It is part of the Vista Village Center, as you can see from this picture. Sinopolis is further to the northeast, Wave Water Park just to the north, and you have Fraser Farms and Crunch Fitness to the south across the private driveway. To the east, immediately, you have the residential units under the RM15 zone. Just a couple of photos looking north at the project site of the padded areas, and then the one on the right is just looking east where the project site is on the left side, and then Fraser Farms is just immediately across the private driveway. As far as general plan land use designation is identified as being mixed use, which allows up to 40 dwelling units per acre. It's basically all the purple area that it's identified on the slide. And then in terms of the zoning, it's SPI, which stands for Specific Plan Implementation Zone, which is part of the Downtown Vista Specific Plan. You also have Park and Recreation Land Use Designation, which is where the Wave Water Park is located at. And then further to the east or to the right in yellow, it's the medium high density zone at 15 dwelling units per acre. Specifics on the project is that the project, if moving forward, would be required to be processed under a site development plan permit along with landscape review. Total 41 apartment units, as mentioned previously, in 4 separate buildings, 3-story maximum with a composition of 4 studios, 23 one-bedrooms, and 14 two-bedroom units at a proposed density of 32 dwelling units per acre, where 40 is allowed maximum. As far as parking is concerned, per the downtown specific plan, a total of 66 spaces would be required. The plans currently show 15 spaces on site and 9 spaces on that separate parcel J, which is part of the project, so that brings a total of 65. So there is a shortage of 1 space. However, the applicant, the architect, the developer is well aware that the required parking spaces would have to be met for the project. Just wanted to point out some information for the benefit of the Planning Commission is that the Vista Village Center has in place currently a reciprocal easement agreement that basically deals with vehicular, pedestrian, and parking easements throughout the center. And so there is some provisions in the agreement that allows for use of certain parking spaces in certain common areas within certain city parcels throughout the different distribution of how the parcels need parking and how that can be shared amongst them. There's also a provision in the downtown specific plan about an in lieu fee that allows multifamily projects, if it is desired, to actually pay an in lieu fee up to 100% of the required gas parking. So these are just some factual, just some information out of the downtown specific plan and the reciprocal easement agreement. I just wanted to share with you that would be related to this if they were so used. The conceptual site plan on the screen shows the configuration of the proposed project. Again, across the bridge or the existing bridge to the north, there is the parcel where the 9 visitor parking spaces would be located. There's an outlook area. And then the project site itself has the 4 proposed buildings, starting on the left, building 1, 2, which houses actually the clubhouse, and then 3 and 4. Those are the buildings 1, 3, and 4 are 3 stories, and then the building 2 is a 2-story building. You also have the parking dispersed throughout the site, common open space in the form of passive and active recreation area. You have an outdoor living area or room in the middle, in the center of the project site. There's a bocce ball terrace, several lookout areas and sitting areas, along with landscaping. In terms of the architecture, it is really a contemporary architectural style design, and these design elements that you see on the various buildings that are basically mimicking and basically duplicating some of the design elements from the Vista Village Center and also from Buena Vista Creek. There's use of the cornices with the creek and the water movement to imitate or to emulate the existing design themes that are utilized in the Vista Village Center. There are wood trellises, the decorative balconies with decorative guardrails, and heavy timber as deck support, and also the use of roof metal, the metal roof material, along with the exposed rafters. So that's kind of the types of materials that are used throughout the different elevations throughout the buildings. As far as the floor plans, you have the one on the left, which is the floor plan for Building 1. Buildings 3 and 4 are kind of mirror images of each other. And then Building 2, which houses the clubhouses on the right side. And you have full-size copies of the floor plans, so I'm just putting it here for depiction purposes, for sake of discussion. So with that, staff is requesting that the Planning Commission provide comments, direction to the applicant related to this proposed design. As a reminder to the public and members in the audience, there is no formal vote tonight or any action on this item tonight. We're merely here to listen and collect comments and direction from the Planning Commission on the proposed request. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Chow. Commissioner Carroll, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Chow, what is the building setback? Is there a particular
Yes,
distance?
per the downtown specific plan, there's a 15-foot setback, which they're meeting, and but they are meeting the current setbacks as specified in the downtown specific plan.
Okay, it looks like building 1 is encroaching, unless I'm reading the plan wrong, in the northwest corner.
At the northwest corner, towards the bridge, you mean?
Yes.
My understanding is that it is meeting, but I'll double check on that.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Fleming?
Thank you. You had mentioned the parking, and I was a little confused in your description of the city shared parking some way. Maybe I misunderstood what you're trying to say there. Could you explain that a little
Sure.
more detail to me?
Sure, definitely. There's a reciprocal easement agreement that's in place that was amended in 2006 that basically addresses all the different parcels within Vista Village Center. From the original development, that is, when first was established, there are provisions in terms of vehicular easement access, pedestrian easement access throughout the site, and as well as parking. So there are certain parcels within certain phases within the project, within Vista Village, not just these 2 parcels or these 3 parcels, that allows one to utilize parking spaces within common areas within the center to be able to meet their parking requirements. So there are some provisions or some languages that allow one to do that. So I merely just wanted to bring that up because, one, the fact that right now, yes, there's a shortage of 1 parking space, which they are well aware of, the developer, but they will be meeting the 66. But on top of that, in addition to that, there are provisions in the reciprocal easement agreement that allow for more spaces to be basically utilized for different parcels throughout the project,
All right.
in addition to being met on site.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Rossler, please.
Patsy, what's the specific plan say about these 2 parcels of land? I know they're designated mixed use. It seems at one point, I remember Mr. Connolly saying that they were reserved for restaurant sites. Has the city's thinking on these 2 sites changed?
Yeah, the original plans, you're correct, were for restaurant pads, originally as planned for, but it had been a long time, waiting, and nothing has happened or had happened up to this date, and so therefore the city decided to look in a different direction. The downtown specific plan does allow for mixed use for residential, commercial, retail, including obviously restaurants, but yeah, unfortunately it didn't work out, and long time waiting for that to happen, but it didn't. So as far as the restaurants go.
Okay, all right. I think I'll save my rest of the questions for the applicant.
Thank you. Commissioner Jackal, please.
Thank you. I had a question about the restaurants also, so thank you. Okay, for parking. So we're 1 parking space down now. Does that include, as part of the count, any ADA spaces that there may be?
It does. Right now, our code does not exclude or differentiate, so it's all part of the count as far as what's total required, includes the handicap spaces.
Okay, and the only visitor parking is across the bridge?
Right now, they've labeled it as such, the 9 spaces that are off to the north. But again, that's why we're here tonight as far as where the spaces are located, but that's what they were showing right now is the 9 visitor parking spaces on that parcel, on the smaller parcel.
So if you're coming to visit, you park there and schlep all the way across the bridge, clear to the far end of the complex, unless you park in one of the other spaces.
Correct. Or maybe there's a reconfiguration where the visitor spaces are. Maybe there's half on one side of the bridge and half on the other side. I'm not sure. But that would mean that some residents have to park on the other side. So
Yeah.
that's part of the discussion, I think.
Okay, well, think that might need to be thought about some more. I'll wait for later. Thank you.
Commissioner Looney, please.
Thank you. Patsy, and then again, another couple questions on parking.
Okay.
We've got 5 ADA spaces. And so if we take those 5 away from the 59, we're ending up with 54 spaces. The shared parking, I think, is going to be real important because what has been, do we have any findings on how many ADA spaces are occupied on some of the more recent structures that are similar in this? Because if they're vacant all the time,
That's true.
we're really shortchanging, I think, the residents of the building.
Yeah, that is.
Someone's having to do some walking.
Yeah, that's not something that we have looked at specifically as to how it's playing out there in the real world that when projects are built, but we are going to be updating our parking regulations soon. In fact, we're coming to you pretty soon with a discussion on that, and I think that's probably something that would be worthwhile to consider, at least as an avenue on how to account for or consider that a factor, because most of the time it might not be being utilized. So I know that that's a concern. But right now we account for all of that being part of one total number. So.
Okay. Another question, not parking related. On Building 1, on the south edge or south side of Building 1, we have a trash enclosure.
Yes.
And it appears that the gates face the sidewalk. Is that intentional, or is that maybe an oversight? Because if I try to envision the trash being picked up, I would think it would be easier if the gates were on the drive side rather than having to move the containers across the sidewalk and into that other parking area. Do you see that area on the site?
I see that area, and I probably have to open up the plans because it's quite small, and I realize that. We can actually ask the architect for explanation on that if you like when it comes up. They have actually a presentation, so when you like for that to happen, then we can bring that up.
Thank you.
Commissioner Garrettson, please.
Yes, Patsy, what has been the city discussion about this development basically surrounding or encompassing a public park in terms of how you control? I mean, I know this has video surveillance. I guess I just see a potential major conflict here between city use and the use of the residents. What has been the discussion on that?
As far as the use of Creekside Park itself and getting down there, as part of this particular early design review, I don't think we have had much discussion in that regard as far as how we're going to, or what are the issues or what could potentially be negatives or positives. I know that there are several points of access on how to get down there from a public standpoint, through the bridge and then down into behind or right next to the outlook area, next to that little parcel J, and other points of access as well, or through the staircase, I guess, for that matter, through the project. But we have not discussed in detail as far as what the downs, I guess, or the upsides would be on that one. So,
especially with the use of the bridge. I mean, that's going to be, it's a public access bridge.
Correct.
But yet the residents would have to use that with visitors or have access to that property J.
And
so I see that as a potential major conflict.
And we
down the
would,
road.
we would make sure from a staff standpoint that bridge remains public accessible, and then through the path on just to the west, I guess, at the westernmost portion of the project site, that pathway continues to remain open for that purpose, so that there continuously is public access. So, but it's something to look at.
And there's sidewalks around the entire property that are public accessible.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jackal, please.
Thank you. I will follow that up. That was one of my concerns, too. I was going to bring up in the site design, but there, on these plans, it shows the existing park steps leading from the apartment development down into the creek walk. But it also shows and is labeled as a gated private access. So how does the public, say, on the Fraser Farm side, get down into the creek walk?
Yeah, currently, based on the site plan, there's this portion right here that's accessible to the bridge, and then one would have to cross the bridge and get down into the creek area.
That's
But for
really
this,
hampering public access, I think.
sure. And obviously, there's the staircase that you were mentioning, Commissioner Jackal. And obviously, if there's a desire, then obviously, again, we would have to bring this up as part of the discussion, how can they be maintained or improved for purposes of public access. But definitely, that's a point of discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there someone from Silvergate that's going to give us a presentation?
Yes, they are here.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. Happy New Year. My name is Jim Reynolds. I'm the developer, partner of Silvergate, and here representing Pathfinder and Silvergate. The architect here is Benson & Bowles. We're going to introduce them here shortly. The landscape architect is Land Lab, who you're familiar with, and civil engineer is Michael Baker, and they're here to answer any questions you might have. Well, about a little background, the designers here, Benson & Bowles, were the architects and prepared the original Vista Village Master Plan. And they were the designers of the Main Street, and they're also the Fraser Farms and these pads themselves. So they're very familiar with the Vista Village Plan and the history and intent of that. So as a result, the Creekside Architectural Building, the elements will all relate to the existing center. And as you'll see, they do. A little site background, we just talked about, it was originally designed as a restaurant pads, and it failed to lease due to lack of visibility and remote proximity to the Vista Village Drive. The original design provided 49 on-site parking spaces plus 113 off-site parking places adjacent to the parking lots per a shared parking agreement. And that's what you were talking about just a little while ago. When we put the property in escrow, we came to the city and shared our vision for this apartment building. And as a result, I think Vista Creekside, the name of the project, provides a smart growth housing element located within walkable Vista Village shopping and entertainment center. Logical, smart growth thing. The final project design will meet the city parking requirements as outlined in the specific plan. And with that, I'm going to introduce Richard Benson, the architect, with Benson & Bowles. Come on up, Richard.
Okay, great. Happy New Year. First off, I want to say I'm very proud of my involvement in the original Vista Village development. And I think it's a great opportunity, some 18 years after we started working on it, to have an opportunity to finish it off. So I am extremely excited about it, and I think we can make this work as a smart growth opportunity. This is I think the other point I want to make is that I'm going to go through this a little quicker than I thought. I hadn't seen Patsy's full presentation, so she's covered things. I'll try to hit the highlights as I go through this. But one thing that I will do is mention some things that I think might have been missed. The specific plan area, the downtown specific plan area, we encompass all of the West Gateway portion of that. And if you look at the map there, we are in proximity to the transit center. We're within a quarter-mile walk of that. which makes this an excellent opportunity for a TOD or transit-oriented development. So that was something we were very excited about as well. And we were excited about it when Vista Village incorporated that. We were involved in the design of the Sprint Center at that time, too. So this was the original plan, and you'll recognize that there are some differences, but most of the key elements are still in place. The objective was to extend downtown and, in fact, create more of a downtown experience as you came through from Main Street into Vista Village. And then we have right in the heart of it the creek and the water park, which is a very unique feature for a entertainment and shopping center. And right along the creek there, you'll see in this, because you didn't see it in our plan, the location of the original restaurants that were suggested to surround the creek. And as Jim said, it didn't really work out because we have all these other restaurant opportunities on Vista Village Drive, and you know how retailers and restaurateurs are. They want the visibility first. So 15 years after the rest of the center was developed, it still sat there as dirt. Another thing that I think is interesting in this exhibit is to see what it looked like before, because Broadway went straight through there. There was a concrete V channel, and now we've got that beautiful park that was put together in large part by Rob Gerke and his group at what was RBF, is now Michael Baker. So we worked with them on that as well. So, as I said, it sat vacant for many years, and we just had to come up with something that made some sense. And the introduction of residential seems like a very logical thing adjacent to this park. You can see in this picture, too, the proximity of pieces around it. I would like to point out the triangular parking area that's to the left of the image, which is seldom used at all right now. And the parking was always intended to extend beyond the boundaries of the two pads that the larger restaurants are on. And I think that's just something that will be worked out. So why this is a great smart growth opportunity is it has all these attributes. We will now have a mix of land uses. We've got a compact building design, a very walkable community, a strong sense of place. We're going to be preserving open space elsewhere by using a site that already has its infrastructure in place. And then we've got the great opportunity to make this a TOD or a transit-oriented center. So I won't spend too much time on this. Again, you'll have some specific questions on the site plan. But we're still looking at the remote parcel here and how that gets utilized. But we know we can meet the city standards for the parking, in particular if we take into account remote parking areas, and we'll have to work those sort of things out. But just a few other images. This is a site section cut through the building and then shows the relationship to the creek. There's a retaining wall on one side. These are walk-up units, so you walk up to flats on 3 levels. There's tuck-under garages and covered parking out in front. And all of the units orient toward the park. And this is a view from the park looking at the park retaining wall and how the building, fits in with, in fact, the shape of the perimeter really helps with the design of the building and the site, because it allows opportunities for landscape to come up onto the site and extend into it, so it's an extension of the park. This is from the opposite side. And then I just wanted to point out some of the imagery that we were using, some of the creek-themed architectural elements that we've tied into the center, such as the wave element that repeats itself. We've got a lot of creek themes that went through Vista Village, and if you walk through it carefully, you'll see them all over the place. These are some of them. The wave rails, we're going to be using those same wave rails. We're going to be incorporating stone. We're going to be using some of the materials that are directly adjacent at the Fraser Farms with the heavy timbers with the dark stain on them. And I think it's going to be a beautiful mix. We like to put some unique details into every project too, and that's a part of the placemaking efforts that we're making. And all of this is going to feel very unique to Vista. You won't see it anyplace else, so we're proud of that. And little tricks like the supports on the balconies that are on the opposite side, the lower image there, are Vista Village, so VV, rather than just straight things. So things like that are fun to do, and I think they make Vista more special. And just finally, there are some images, 3D images that are in progress still. This one shows in particular the trellis element and the stone that is right in the center and faces and actually helps screen the service area across the way, both visually and acoustically. But that is the location of the clubhouse within. A couple more images. And this one is from the bridge as you cross, and you can see it's actually pretty close. So we can distribute the parking as we go, and we know there are, by the way, the mistake on the being one shy was my fault. That there are required 0.25 spaces for every unit, and we went to 10.25, and I rounded down instead of up. So, but we can fix that. So we think this is a wonderful opportunity. It's an opportunity to introduce residential to a retail space. That's something that was done in the past in traditional downtowns, and it's an opportunity to do it here at Vista, and we think that it's a great opportunity. So I'll be available for questions, as will Neil Hadley from Land Lab, the landscape architect, and Rob Gerke, the civil engineer.
Mr. Bowles, you used the term a couple of times, smart growth.
Yes.
Can you tell me again what that means, and will these be market value apartments or?
The market rate apartments, as I understand it, yes, they will be.
Okay.
Smart growth is utilizing, rather than green fields, which is chasing coyotes off the land and scraping it and so forth. It's utilizing sites that are already developed. And there are other things about that too. A lot of them actually harken back to more traditional town experiences, where you can, walk downstairs and go get your coffee, or you can go across the street to Fraser Farms, do your shopping, and come back to the house or your home. That's what smart growth is about, and it's a real movement now. It used to be the norm, but now architects and planners and designers are looking at opportunities for what they call smart growth in gray field rather than green field locations. So if that helps a little bit, those key points I had in the slide too also tell you what those attributes are.
Have you done this kind of development before?
Yes, we have. We've done it as far north as Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
What do you find? How do I say this? Do you find that the tenants actually they may have less cars? Do they have the normal 3 people 3 cars, but they'll be walking to the local?
Yes, that is the experience, and I think it's been proven. And the other aspect of this is that you've got the transit center so close too. So all of those things, you add them up, it's like a perfect opportunity, I think, in this location.
Okay, I've got some speakers for you. Commissioner Carroll, please.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 things right now. I'm looking at parking spaces 9 and 10 at Building 1. They're the 2 by themselves west of the trash enclosure.
Do you want me to go back to the site?
Yeah, if you're not familiar, if you don't remember which ones 9 and 10 are, then take a look. So it's directly south of the west end of Building 1, those 2 spaces.
Right.
Are they... It looks a little problematic for them getting out of those spaces. There's really nowhere to get turned around. Are you envisioning them being able to turn around in that 24 feet?
We're going to have to work that out. And somebody already pointed out the location of the trash area there. That does need some finessing, if you will. And I think there's an opportunity with that. We've actually pulled that back a little bit. So if you were to back a car out of one of those spaces, you'd have an extra 3 feet or so by the time you got the car back. But that needs to be refined somewhat. It is a tight opportunity and a dead end. And that's also the reason we were looking at having the doors open out rather than in. If you notice on the other side, we've got an inlet and an outlet, so cars can come through and out, as can trash trucks and so forth. This is still a conceptual design, and we need to talk to the trash company. And
Edco,
so
yeah, because I just, when I saw the doors on the south side of the trash enclosure, I was just assuming it was because the trash truck wasn't going to want to drive down that turn and private drive and then back out of it.
That's a good part of the reason we did it that way, and we recognize that there are further refinements that need to be made to make sure that works with those parking spaces at the end.
Okay. The second item I want to bring up is this, it's already been mentioned, is this access to the kind of the Center Creek step area. Do you or the developer care to give us your thoughts on what you have in mind there?
The issue of security and marketability are issues that we have to work out. We envision that actually is private. There is a gate there that does not. You can come up the stairs and down the stairs, but unless you're a resident, you would not come through that gate. Now, there is probably a way to make it work that there could be public access through there, but we've got stairs on both ends of the site here, and there are also other ramped opportunities, other locations where you can come down into the creek. So that's something that will be, we'll have to have some further discussion with staff and based on the comments that we received today. But as we've got it now, the sidewalk that's against the creek, right by those units, is secured. And,
okay.
And I think we've got patios and balconies and so forth that overlook the creek. And there are plenty of opportunities around the creek that you can enjoy the creek. If you remember that one section in particular, you've got a fairly foreboding wall on that side of the creek. The other opens up completely to the public and to the parking that's up there.
Oh, yeah, I'm real familiar with this area, and I know that this, in my opinion, is not a very utilized space by the public in this step area. But I could be wrong, but just every time I've been there, it's other parts of the park are being used and not so much this particular center part. But I just want to get your thoughts on it, and thank you.
Commissioner Fleming?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just had 2 or 3 questions. One is management. How's it going to be on-site management of that? Is that the plan?
Now, I'm going to let Jim answer that question. I'm not certain.
Yes, there will be on-site management on. The management company that is a partner of ours is Sunrise Management Company. They manage thousands of units here in San Diego, in Vista also.
So
and there will be a person on site. That's correct.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the other thing is, one of the things I noticed is the big majority of these are studio or 1-bedroom. There's a few 2-bedroom, but mostly it seems to me probably going to be geared to young people the urban environment of the downtown that we're developing might be perfectly in line with what they need.
I think that's the thought. I really do think it's going to be a younger demographic that will find this appealing.
And
or maybe people like me.
The park was just mentioned, about that. And you said you have stairs on each end. Is there a walk area right next to that retainer wall that makes it easily accessible to the public? Not from y'all's point of view, but from John Doe's point of view, the Vista resident.
You can walk on either side of the creek. Yes, you can.
Okay, there is a
Yeah.
walk area through
Yes,
there,
there
right
is.
next to that. Okay, so that's good. And then, let's see, you was talking about the shared parking, and there was a comment made earlier about the people having to park, visiting over here in the Site J and walking all the way to the other end. Right next to the eastern end is a section of parking that is, unless it's a big movie, doesn't get used. There's almost never anybody there. So just to point that out. And that's the comments I have about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Looney, please.
Thank you. A couple questions. I want to make sure I understand the floor plan. Looking at the ground level, as I come into those garage spaces, is there a means by which to access a living unit
No.
from that garage? So I'm having
No,
to
you have to
park the
walk,
car.
you have to go out, and all the entrances, all the units face the creek. I mean, if you live here, you're going to experience the creek. These buildings are not very big buildings. They really are there's one longer building. We've got a cut through on that longer building. The other buildings, you would come out, and there are only like 3 or 4 cars that you'd walk past to get around to the front. But the intent is to get people out to the creek. You have that experience every day. I mean, and maybe it'd be nice if you were on the ground level to just walk right into your car from the garage and not look out, but that's not the way this has been planned.
Okay. Coming back to an issue of parking, I think it's one of the most unique sites where you have so much parking surrounding you that that's currently never used or very seldom used. And so I don't see an issue with the parking, the number of parking spaces.
That's one of the other sweet things about this site. The property that was pointed out, that triangular parking lot, probably for Star Wars it was full, when it opened. But every single aerial I've seen, there's 1 or 2 cars in it, and there's 70 spaces right there, potentially. And it's immediately adjacent to a lot of the units that are in this development. So I think that would work out very well. And then you've got also the parking that's in between the wave and the creek that is underutilized as well. And that's just a short trip across that bridge, which is a good experience.
Could you explain a little bit further the concept of the food truck vending space?
Yeah,
How that functions? I mean, I like the idea that you've utilized that bridge because that's kind of that experience. It's unfortunate that more of the residents couldn't experience that bridge, but I think as they get out into the community, they can. But I'm curious to hear your approach or your...
We're still tossing out ideas on what can go there. There was originally, if you remember that original site plan that we had, there's a little tiny retail space there. Nobody knew what that was going to be. I mean, there are ideas now that are more viable, such as food trucks, where if you provide an opportunity where a gourmet food truck to pull up or something, that could work out. There are also some other types of uses. We've been tossing that around. We would like to activate it. If you recall, you can see it right there. There's a large green component there. We can still accommodate, we think we can accommodate the parking, a little parklet there that's overlooks the park as well as what's going down below. But we're still trying to figure out what we can use to activate it. The food truck was one idea. We'll probably come back with some other ideas as well for what might work. A little coffee shop or kiosk or some other things.
Well, just be mindful too that the history of that parcel didn't seem to draw food establishments. So to have that food truck there, it works great when there is a great movie showing. But I think that's going to be an interesting piece of dirt to deal with.
Well, that may have been what was behind the food truck, because if it doesn't work, it just drives off. So.
Well, thank you.
Commissioner Garrettson, please.
My question was answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rossler, please.
My question is for Mr. Reynolds, but don't go away.
Okay.
Mr. Reynolds, does Silvergate do just residential construction, or have you done mixed-use projects with ground floor commercial?
We have done all of that, yes.
Okay. I have a major concern about the project. I think this is one of an excellent opportunity for a true mixed use. At the minimum, live-work units that would front on the street. The project basically turns its back. Its orientation is to the creek. I think it would be better for the city if the orientation was to the street and you had ground floor commercial along the street. So I wanted to know if you had that, if you have that capability. People who have come here before the commission in mixed-use projects don't have experience in mixed use, and so that's a major concern of mine. And I wanted to find out if you had the experience to do that.
We've had a lot of experience doing that. Again, we've studied that. Richard Benson and I have built projects with that exactly in it, and here it just won't work.
Okay,
there's not the traffic. There's not. It's the wrong location, and it's
being located between the theater and Fraser Farm. You don't think that there's enough?
Well, it's not located between the theater and Fraser Farms. It's located next to Fraser Farms over there, where there's an alley going back and forth, a small alley going back and forth. It's not the right place. It hasn't been leased in 15 years.
I know, and we just lost our 2 restaurants, but I understood we lost our restaurants because the property owner was upping the rent.
You need the people there to activate the retail.
Yeah.
And this activates the retail. And that's our
and
we really, I've probably built more mixed-use projects downtown San Diego than anybody. And so we've looked at this real hard. We would love to build mixed use.
Okay.
That's our thing. But this is not the place to do it. This is a place where the retail is already there. Let's get some people in the seats so the businesses stay open.
Okay. I think that answers my questions. Thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
Thank you. I've got a couple of speaker slips, and we'll go from there.
Okay, great.
First one, Nikki Hobson, please come forward, state your name, give your address.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Nikki Hobson, and I live at 2070 Ridgeline Avenue in Vista. Been here for 25 years, and I love Vista. In looking at the small images on my computer, I couldn't tell a lot about the project, but one thing I think I should mention is this is a really important project for this area, and unfortunately, people don't know anything about it. Somehow the word didn't get out that this was being planned, that there's an opportunity to come and address the Planning Commission about it. And I don't know if there's any reasonable way to change our notification system or how to publicize projects like this, but I would certainly encourage you to think about it if you can. Okay, and my first impression is that this is a really dense project. It's got a lot of people crammed into a very small space, and it's going to have a tremendous impact on an already difficult problem of traffic and, as you have discussed at length, parking. And I don't know, if there's an answer. I don't quite understand the parking situation, but it seems like there's not enough parking planned for. And my personal preference is that we should be building condos and townhomes in Vista. We have a ton of apartments, and this particular area is really saturated by apartments with plenty of vacancies available. For instance, the new Avalon project is still half empty, and the with the owner offering some very nice incentives for people to come and rent there, and they're just not doing it. And then there's another project which the Silvergate people are planning right across the street from Avalon. That's another 100 apartments that are going to be built there. So I'm not sure we need more apartments. We need condos and townhomes. And the main reason for that is that people who own their homes take a greater interest in the community. They put down roots. They care about what happens. Whereas renters, and bless their hearts, I have nothing against renters, but they have a very short time horizon, and they have very little interest in the future of the community. So I would encourage you to look for condo developments rather than apartments. And I guess, to my view, the most serious flaw of this project is the way that it is screening the public away from the park, both physically and visually. I mean, if you look at it, it wraps around that area, and I suppose if you really, really want to get there, you can. But it doesn't offer much encouragement for the public to come there. And I would love to see somehow easier access for the public, and we don't want to fence the public out of the public's park. I also, the contemporary architecture is not my favorite. It's probably adequate, but I don't think it especially represents Vista. You know, we're a Rancho Adobe Spanish land grant community, and I think the architecture should reflect that heritage. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Ms. Hobson, how did you find out about this project?
A friend of mine apparently went online, found it, and let me know about it. But this idea that only people 500 feet around a project are going to be impacted is just erroneous. It affects the whole community, especially a project like this.
Thank you very much for your comments. Steve Baran, please. Hi. Please state your name, give your address.
Steve Barron, 1182 Casa Bonita Way. The architect said something about preserving open space. I don't see it being preserved. I see it being a 3.5-story albatross. He said something about 0.25 spaces. 0.25 spaces of what? What was he referring to? The building code calls for, I believe, Patsy, 2.3, right?
May I answer?
Oh, please.
2.3 is from the multifamily zone, the parking ratio. The downtown specific plan has a different parking ratio for studios, 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. The 0.25 refers to the requirement for gas space per unit. That's what Richard was referring to.
So I count 55 beds roughly in that place, and they've got 60-something parking spaces. That math doesn't work out.
Again, there is specific requirements. Would you like me to go over the requirements for the?
While she's looking that up, I tend to walk my dogs in that park and shop at Fraser Farms. The last thing I kind of want somebody doing is from 3 stories watching what I'm doing, looking at me out of their balcony or whatever. It just kind of ruins the private moment of having a nice quiet park to go and spend time by myself in. So.
Okay. So basically, the downtown specific plan calls for a studio to have 1 space per unit plus 0.25 guest space per unit, so 1.25. A 1-bedroom would be required to have 1.25, so the same rate. And a 2-bedroom would be required to have a 2.25. So there are 4 studios, 23 1-bedroom, if I remember correctly, and 14 2-bedrooms. And if we do the math and add them all up together, it would come out to a total of 65.25 which would be rounded up to 66.
And again, we're looking at this corporation coming and looking at building apartments. Like my neighbor said, we need homes, we need ownership, we need people that are vested in the community. That's what I would hope you guys would plan for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Kramer, when I have the opportunity, I just wanted to clarify on the public notification. Is this the right time?
Sure.
I just wanted to, I know that it was mentioned about the 500 feet within the project boundaries for owners and occupants to be notified. We have also made efforts to make sure that folks that are interested in learning about projects that are coming through the city, such as early design reviews or discretionary public hearing items, they can sign up on the city's homepage to receive notifications of such meetings taking place. To my knowledge, there's over 1,000 people that have signed up. So we also make an effort to send out notices on these early design review meetings and public hearing items to those folks as well. So there's an e-blast that goes out basically at the same time. Also, the site gets posted with a notification on the site itself physically. So in case people are driving by or walking by. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cho. Let's see. Patrick? Please, excuse me, state your name and give your address, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Pat Lenahan, and my address is 12631 Vista Panorama in Santa Ana. My family owns the Staples building in the center there, and that's the only reason that I'm here. I received a notice here just a week ago, and I came here more as a fact-finding mission. I'm not pro, I'm not against, but there are some points that I thought would be best to be brought up so that everybody's on the same page. I don't know if during the time that this property has been owned by my family since 2004, if something has changed in the requirements of the center. I brought with me the recorded parking reciprocal easement agreement and also with the disposition and development agreement between the city and the original developer. And from what I'm reading, it specifically excludes residential and apartments on that property. I don't know if something's changed during the course of these 11 years or 12 years now. That I thought I would bring up because it specifically excludes them. Part of it also addresses parking requirements. Everything is to be retail or the water park or the theaters, but everything was originally designed to be retail. So now we're introducing apartments and residential into that, something that seems like it's specifically excluded. I understand that as part of the development originally, the city obtained or had access, or I don't know how it obtained, but these lots are part of the city's, they are owned by the city. I assume that I'm correct, but my question on that was, is this property being sold? Is it being leased? Is there a conflict of interest in pursuing this specific development? When the original design was for fast food restaurants, which also incorporates the parking issue. Every one of these retail had a specific parking requirement, 4.5 or 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So now we're changing that because of a different type of use. We're changing the parking requirements. We talk of sharing, there's lots of additional parking. We can go park over in front of Fraser Farms. Nobody's using it. But that's not true. It is being used. It's heavily used. So when you say you're going to park on somebody else's, it's reciprocal, agreed. But you have to provide for yourself first. It doesn't mean that I can go park all of my customers all over in front of Fraser Farms. It's reciprocal. So wherever the parking happens to show up, people can park there. They're in, they're out. So number one, the numbers aren't going to come up if you took the square footages, of which I don't really know, but it's going to be much higher than the 66 or 7 spaces. So I want to bring that up. The other part is, I know that part of the benefit of having this is one of the amenities, so to speak, of the apartments is the creek walk. So it's being sold as this is a nice amenity for people that are living there for the creek walk. But it's not their creek walk. It's the city's creek walk. It's for everyone's use. As part of the phase 2, where Staples is, we pay, as part of the original agreement, the development agreement, a portion of the maintenance of that city walk. So that portion is paid on an annual basis to maintain that space. That was the original agreement. We abide by that. So if this goes forward, is this development going to pay their share to lighten the load on everybody else that's been paying in all of these years to maintain that? So if they have so many square feet, are they going to pay their proportionate share? Also, the common area maintenance. Here you're putting in a lot of usage of these people that are living there, which is fine. But who pays for the lighting, the landscaping, the security, the maintenance of the parking lots, which reciprocal, everybody uses, we all pay a proportionate share. Is that going to be incorporated into whatever agreement ultimately ends up happening? That's it.
Thank you, sir. It was quite enlightening. Cliff Kaiser, please.
Madam Chairperson, if I could respond to some of the
That'd be great.
Issues that were raised. The property is currently owned by the successor agency to the Vista Redevelopment Agency. As you know, the redevelopment agency was dissolved. Originally, this was a redevelopment project. There was an expectation that the land would be used for restaurant use. That proved to be not a viable option. And that was true even during the period when the redevelopment agency was in existence and was able to provide financial incentives. With the dissolution of redevelopment, there's no ability to provide financial incentives. And beyond that, it's proved to be not viable in the first instance. In the event that there would be a contribution towards the cost of maintaining the creek walk, so a fair share would be paid, and there'd be a need, of course, to update the CC&Rs to accommodate the changed use.
There was also some question regarding the original plan, said that there could not be any residential.
I think that's where there'd be a need to update the CC&Rs. I think maybe not everybody's aware of that potential update, but I think that most people are.
Okay.
Most interested parties.
All right. Thank you so much. Sorry, Mr. Kaiser, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. Actually, there's a lot of attractive things and some negative things about this, in my opinion. And given only 3 minutes, some of you know me. I tend to be blunt sometimes. But in reality, I respect the people that have come before us and the developers and their interest in developing, and the architect and his experience. But frankly, I would have to question the designer or the architect's wisdom in putting restaurant pads there and coming back to us 18 years later and saying it doesn't work. Okay, so now he's coming to us and saying we've got a plan here, and are we going to come back here in 5, 10, 15 years and say, no, I'm sorry, it didn't work. And at the same time, I would also ask, well, what's the hurry? I mean, this property is owned by the city, the successor agency, and there's really not any urgency to get rid of this property, although it has been sold, I believe. But let's make sure that we develop this for really the greater good of downtown Vista. Let's make this a great, really improved asset in the downtown. We've got great things happening in the downtown. Let's make sure we're not rushing in there with some cheap apartments. Parking is a concern. I don't have a problem with the shared parking. I do agree that the parking over there by the Krikorian and by the Wave, it can be very well shared. But at the same time, I don't agree with the parking standards that says if you've got all these two-bedroom apartments that you only need 1 or 1.5 car spaces for that. You really need a lot more. And if you're going to share those, that's okay, but make sure we're putting realistic parking numbers in place when we put this together. And I agree with Nikki Hobson, contemporary architecture just doesn't fit here in Vista. And forgive me to the architecture and to the designers of City Hall. The City Hall doesn't fit here in Vista, and it doesn't fit there for the apartments in the Krikorian area. Of course, I'd be interested in the traffic study that comes out as to how this is all going to fit in. And if you must build high-density housing in here, I also agree with some of the other speakers. Let's make it condominiums, not apartments. Let's put people that have a vested interest in investment in Vista and investment in where they live, and perhaps even go with luxury apartments or luxury condominiums. And I think some of you probably already know that smart growth is a 4-letter word. It just doesn't work. It's not something that we want. Smart growth means cheap, close to transit. Let's get low-income people in here and get them out of here so they can go to work. I appreciate the struggles that low-income people go through, but we need to invest in the downtown. I don't really like the tuck-under garages. I'd rather have garages with garage doors. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Val Brown?
Hello.
Hi, Val. Can you give us your address, please?
Sure. 562 Joe Pill Drive. Thank you for this opportunity. Patsy, I do appreciate the efforts that you did go through. However, I found out about this meeting from John Conley. I called him about something else I just found out about yesterday. So this is a very, very important project. The village is the heart of our community. And this project is going to change the look and the feel of our community. I'm concerned that this is the second project proposed by this developer that is blocking the public off from a public open space. The Breeze Hill Apartments will block our community off from our one little 6-acre park. And these buildings have their back, as was stated, I believe, by one of the commissioners, to the community. And they're very plain. I'm not going to repeat what everybody else said. I'm in agreement with that. I don't want to waste your time. In preparing for this meeting tonight, I found this article from 2001. And it said that there was a tour of the Creek Walk, which largely unseen from the road and will likely be finished by December. Considered the focal point of the project, the Creekside Promenade will be the cornerstone of Vista's downtown redevelopment project, with some of the most lucrative businesses within Vista Village slated to overlook the creek banks. I think Cliff made a really good point. Why were these pads ever designated for retail if that wasn't going to work? And now a private developer will be benefiting from a public space. And I agree that it's going to be difficult to get down there. I would hope that whatever goes in there makes it easier to use that space. And visually, we are going to be completely blocked off from seeing this. The parking is a very real issue. My comment is anecdotal, but I think realistic. After a long day at work, 6 p.m., Fraser Farms, need to pick up a few things to finish dinner. We ended up parking in the dirt. There is no parking. And so while there may be parking that's not being used, it is the parking in the right place. Crunch has really, really filled up that parking lot at all times. And so I asked the checker, I said, hey, is it always like this at 6 o'clock? And he goes, at 6 o'clock, it's like this all day. So there may be the parking, but is it in the right place? Density, 32 units per acre. Avalon is 30 units per acre, and in the same height range, has completely walled us off from our little shopping center that we had there. Visually, you can't even see it anymore. The the back's modern design. That traffic in that area would agree. The comments about the trash opening out into an area that's already busy, I just don't really think that that's appropriate. But it seems like what should have been a public space with restaurants. And when you look at the original pads, there is open space in between where you can actually see. So I just think that we deserve better. I'd like to see if we can find a solution. Let's the city get the help they need to help pay the costs of taking care of the creek. I know that it is a burden. But once this is done, we don't get to do it again. And this is a public treasure. So I really appreciate your consideration. Hope we can have a larger discussion about this with more of the community when they know about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Dennis Bergren, please.
Hello, my name's Dennis Bergren. I live at 1134 Costa Bonita Way. I've lived there since 1988. I've seen the city of Vista basically explode in that time period. Personally, I think the density of this project is a little too high. One of the overhead slides showed the Wave Water Park and this property and just a little bit of view of Fraser Farms. Every single parking place over there was consumed. During the daytime, Fraser Farms does a terrific business, and there is no parking there. If you come over in the evening to have dinner, like at Chili's, you're lucky if you can park at Staples, because the parking is consumed. In the summertime, the Wave Water Park runs, and when school is in, you have Vista High School and Rancho Buena Vista High School that the swim teams and the water polo teams utilize the Wave Water Park pool. They used to use Lincoln, but now they use this one. And when those meets are going, there is no parking adjacent to that property all along that area. It's totally filled with spectators, parents, family, and friends. The only available parking that I've ever seen in this area is that one little niche in the upper right-hand corner. Other than that, parking is atrocious in that area at some points of time. And again, I think traffic's going to be a nightmare trying to get in and out. Anyway, I appreciate the work that you folks do. It's a job that I'm sure is pretty tough when you have to try to negotiate things with everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no other speaker slips. Anybody wish to put one in? And okay. All right. So now we're to the commissioners' comments. Is there any of the commissioners that would like to discuss the site design and the grading? Commissioner Jackal.
Thank you. I really agree with a lot of the comments that have been made. I think this is way too dense. I think we have more than enough apartments. I think condominiums would be much more appropriate. I feel as though with the three-story design, they're putting the creek walk in a canyon. They're just burying it. And I am desperately concerned about having the public access from the Fraser Farms side down those steps into the creek walk itself. I think you cannot block the public from a public amenity. They just can't do that. And I guess that's all I have to say about that.
Commissioner Fleming, site design and grading.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Jackal about the not blocking the public from their own parks. You can't stop us, put barricades up that's going to keep the public out of the public's park. I don't like the idea of that being used as part of the amenities that you would be providing. as an offset for amenities. So the biggest thing is I tend to agree with most of what everybody was saying. Is I don't like the idea of strictly apartments there. I would much prefer that layout to be, as was said earlier by one of the commissioners, by Commissioner Rosler, the mixed use. Possibly, if you're going to have something there and you have to put some sort of living arrangements, make it a mixed use, make it some sort of townhouses, something less dense. I'm just not happy with the layout there. Thank you.
Commissioner Rossler, please.
I, on the other hand, I'm okay with the density. We're within a quarter mile of the transit station. I think if we're going to do residential, that it's appropriate, the density is appropriate. I would like to see, though, ground floor commercial. And I'm thinking if there isn't the demand for a ground floor commercial, for commercial use, at least a live-work unit where they would have an office or a commercial space downstairs and their living quarters above it in a townhouse type arrangement, and then have the rest of the density in stacked flats if they want. I think there's an opportunity here for that, and I'd like to see that. Mentioned that. Okay. Yes. I'm sorry. The public access. That walkway down from Fraser Farms is a major access down in the park, and I think it needs to be open to the public. So,
Commissioner Garrettson?
His last comment basically covered what I was going to say, and that is public access to the park from all areas. Anytime that I've walked over there before a movie, after a movie, it's a great asset for the city. And if we're going to put fences and keep the public from having access to that, then I would have a major problem with it.
Thank you. My comments on the site design and the grading aspect of it, I like the design. I like the idea of from your unit, though I wish it to be a condo or a townhouse, that you are looking out towards the park. It kind of reminds me of hotels and things that are lining up by a harbor. So the balconies of the apartments are facing the harbor, they're facing the boats, and then the backside is, the way to get in. So that portion of it I really like, but I really would wish that they could be condos or townhouses so that there is that attachment to the community, where renters don't tend to have that kind of attachment. So those are my comments with the site design and grading. We'll now go on to architecture. Does any of the commissioners have a comment on the architecture? Commissioner Jackal.
Okay. I'm wondering what the covered parking is going to look like, because we don't have any representation of that. And again, here we have not four-sided architecture, but we have two-sided architecture. The front and the back have the architectural details, and the sides of the building, which are going to be visible, are just blank. I do kind of like the standing seam roofs, but...
Thank you. Commissioner Carroll.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to comment that I do like this architecture, and I think it does a good job of fitting in with the existing facilities in the neighborhood, Fraser Farms, and I think it fits in really well and color scheme and style-wise what's already existing in the area.
Commissioner Rossler?
I agree with Commissioner Carroll.
Commissioner Looney?
I think on the exterior elevations, particularly on the garage side, there needs to be additional delineation. It's really a 3-story wall with very little architectural delineation. There is some, but it just needs to be embellished a little bit more. On the exterior elevations, I don't know if it's an issue of just of a concept drawing, but the roof edge seems to be about 2 inches thick, and it might look better if you ended up with a thicker edge from your roof assembly down to your rafters. It looks thin. And I brought this up earlier, the access to the front door, where I'm having to walk around the building. I don't see that as a problem on some of the smaller buildings, but particularly on Building 1, I've got to walk quite a ways to get to my front door. Maybe an issue, maybe not be, but I think it's something that should be considered. And I appreciate the photographs of the Krikorian Center, what was a Krikorian Center, because I looked at the exterior elevations and I couldn't figure out why in the world do we have this blue, 3-shaded blue cornice detail, but after seeing those pictures I was reminded that you're carrying that same type of detail, and I think that's a strong point. It really is. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Looney. Commissioner Fleming, please.
Thank you. I agree. I like the look of the architecture. I like the overhangs of the roof. I think that's an attractive shading area that works really well there. And I just wanted to agree that I like, if it has to be apartments and stuff like that, I like the looks of what you've designed.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleming. Commissioner Jackal?
Thank you. To add to the discussion about entrance from the garages, I'm thinking here I am carrying heavy sacks of groceries and I have to walk all this way around. So access would be, I think, a very good thing.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackal. Commissioner Garrettson, please.
I would wonder what the view is going to be like from those houses to the east. I don't see the elevation there. In other words, are these apartments going to be higher than the houses to the east on the other side of that driveway? And what kind of view are they going to have of the roof? What's it going to look like? Those people have been there a while. So I would hope that the roof line is not going to be just an ugly sight for them. So that would be a concern that I would have moving forward.
Next is parking and traffic. Commissioner Rossler?
I was saving my comment on direct access from the garage to the unit for parking, but I agree with what the other commissioners have said. The 2 parking spaces that Commissioner Carroll brought up earlier need to be addressed. There isn't sufficient turnaround area for people parking there to leave. And there has to be a parking management plan. I'm okay with the easement and using the off-site spaces for spillover. But there has to be a parking management plan, and there has to be a management plan of the units. You've heard from the neighborhood concerns about other projects. Those other projects haven't been managed well. They're allowing more than one family to live in the apartments, or they're allowing their tenants to store stuff in their garage and not use their garage. So you're going to have to show us how you're going to address that problem, requiring people to park in their garage or have their garage available for parking and not have densification or bad word, an over too many people living in the apartment. Okay, that's going to be key to address this condition or this concern about condos and ownership. If the apartments that we have in town that are well maintained, we don't have these concerns. Where they haven't been well maintained, people come and complain to us. So management of the apartment project is key. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Roessler. Commissioner Garrettson, please.
I was just going to talk about the management plan, so he's covered it well. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Carroll, please.
Thank you, Chairman. My preference would be to see the 66 stall requirement be met, what I consider to be on-site, and not count what I consider to be non-contiguous off-site parcel J. It's nice that those are there and then someone's going to be able to park there, but I don't really see that. My preference would be for the 66 spaces to be met on parcels 1 and 2.
Thank you. Commissioner Looney, please.
On the traffic, I've been to Fraser Farms when it's hard to get into the parking lot, especially south, just on that entrance into the parking area just south of Fraser Farms. I know there's a light further to the west, but you've got a lot of people coming out of Fraser Farms that cross that drive. And if we're increasing the traffic loads, the pedestrian or the customers from Fraser Farms are going to have to be a lot more aware when they cross that street. And I don't know how that issue is resolved, but it's an issue that I think at least needs to be looked at. I don't know if we put a light at that other drive, I think that can cause some difficulties, but it's certainly going to change the dynamics of traffic flow on that parking area.
My feeling on the parking for this project is way inadequate. Fraser, and I am habitually Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and you can get a parking spot. But if I happen to stop by between 1 and 2 in the afternoon or 6 o'clock, like Ms. Brown commented on, the parking is horrendous. I've, sorry, sir, had to park over at your Staples a few times to get into Fraser. And the parking around the Wave Water Park, both sides of the street, especially when the Wave is open from May to September, but it's full. And a monthly massage envy person, I have to use that little triangular lot because I can't get in to park on the other side. So the parking for this complex, whatever it will be, has got to be more than what the city requirements are for a mixed use in this area, because it is really going to impact all of the rest of that. So those are my comments. Landscaping and amenities, any of the commissioners have any comments on that? Commissioner Jackal?
Just we need a landscape plan.
Commissioner Fleming?
Thank you. Just looking at the things that you had talked about with the bocce ball and things of that nature down that end. That area. That's nice. I like the food truck idea there. And that will be fully available to the citizens of Vista, or is that strictly going to be for the people there? That would have to be for everybody. Thank you.
Commissioner Carroll, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As far as amenities, I like what they've done on the west end, but I don't really see anything on the east end, and I think that's not enough for the amount of units that are being proposed to just have one. Maybe there's something with the clubhouse that we didn't go into that maybe you could talk a little bit about that to enlighten us.
Come on up to the mic,
please. The central area between buildings 2 and 3 by the clubhouse, that's the larger sort of outdoor space. There's a barbecue area, outdoor, hangout space, fire pit, that kind of thing. So that was kind of the central gathering space. In between the buildings, there's the little triangular pieces. Again, that would be more of a little passive lookout space into the park, and it's also helping us deal with our stormwater. We wanted to deal with all of our stormwater on site and complement what's happening with the river park. Okay, thanks. Yeah, if you could just provide us with a little more plan information on that for on the next on a landscape plan that we could see that for ourselves better. Yeah, I think it just needs another enlargement. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments to the applicant and/or staff? Commissioner Rossler?
I'm sorry, I probably should have talked about this under architecture. I want to make sure that each ground floor unit has a private patio outside the front door, and then on the balconies, the door opens out into the balcony, and my thought was that limits the usable space out there. So I would like to. My thought was to have the door open inward to the unit, but that may screw up the floor plan. So that's a concern for me. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Looney, please.
This is a question for Ms. Chow. The street that comes off of Vista Village comes by the water park and then by Fraser Farms. Is that all city-owned, or is any of that drive privately owned?
That's all considered to be private access. I mean, as far as it's not a public street. Wave Drive up to the cul-de-sac, to the bulb, I should say, to the circular portion there in the middle. It's part of that is public, but as you move into the center, it's all private drive, internal private to the center.
So the owners of Fraser Farms and Staples, and then currently they pay the maintenance cost for the paving for that street?
I'm not sure about that as far as how the arrangements are as far as who's paying for maintenance, or if it's, I know it's covered under the reciprocal easement agreement as far as vehicular access, so that everybody has the ability to move internally and freely through those private drives. But as far as maintenance, I'm not sure if we would have to look into that and how that's done.
So whoever develops the property in whatever manner it is developed, they then would be contributors to the maintenance of that drive?
I would assume so, but again, I don't have a for sure answer on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Garrettson, please.
Yes, I have a question on safety of the people living there when you have parking spots on both sides of where they're going to walk, plus at the end. And I don't know how much space, and I know we run into this in parking lots in every commercial building in the world, but that's a dead end. And you're going to have everybody trying to turn, trying to pull out of there. Plus, when people are exiting their garages, they're going to have to walk behind all of those garages. So I don't know how you resolve that, but you could have 22 people parking at the same time and exiting their garages trying to get over to their apartments. So I would be concerned about the safety.
Okay, Ms. Chow and the applicant Pathfinder Silvergate, did you get sufficient information from us?
I have jotted down comments based on everything that you guys have said. I appreciate that. I just wanted to come back to Commissioner Carroll's comment earlier about the setback, the 15-foot, and it does appear that portion of the corners on that building one is encroaching, so we'll just have to look at that and look at those particular issues as we move forward.
Thank you. Yeah, especially since we're talking about that being one of the access points across that nice bridge and to really push that building up and pinch it off could be a problem. It's just, if anything, we'd like that to be a little bit more open there to invite the public.
Okay, that's it for our design review. Thank you very much for your comments. We'll see you again when it comes back to us. All right, so moving on with our agenda, Commission staff discussion, council action and reports. Yep. God darn it.
Just wanted to make.
Excuse me. Gentlemen, can you move the meeting out? Thank you. Hello.
We'll be having a meeting on January the 19th. I'm planning to bring before you a discussion on the parking code update. So we'll be having a community discussion meeting workshop, kind of an open forum so that we can talk about parking code and perhaps talk about the handicap issues and all the stuff that's been brought up related to parking. So it should be an interesting discussion. That would be January the 19th, correct. The consultant will be here, so both the consultant and myself will be here, and so hopefully we'll have a good dialogue.
Good.
And then I also wanted to mention that we received information about the League of California Cities, the Planning Commissioners Academy that's held every year. I know some of you have attended in the past, some of you have not had the opportunity yet. I would like to give the opportunity to those of the commissioners that have not had a chance to perhaps take a first opportunity to kind of attend this. It will be held from March 2nd through the 4th. It is in San Ramon in the Bay Area. And we do have, unfortunately, the deadline, which is quickly approaching us, which is February the 2nd, in order to do registration and housing deadline. So if you do have an interest, if you can shoot me an email and let me know, I would appreciate it. Think about it. And you can also go on their website in order to see more about their sessions and what they're going to cover. And so, but it's always very interesting. I've attended in the past, and some of the commissioners have too, and I think it's always a good experience.
It's very, very worthwhile. So any of the commissioners that have not gone, I really encourage you to do so. Commissioner Carroll?
I'll second that. There are typically some worthwhile seminars and classes at those things. I've been to a couple of them. Some of them are duds, but it's worth it. So I almost brought this up during the agenda item, but maybe it's going to be more of a question. But the general plan was modified, and we have a lot of mixed use designations now, and we're not really seeing any commercial uses being attached to this mixed use, this higher density, what I consider to be a high density, in the theory that it's attached to a mixed use, attached to a commercial use. And I'm curious how many of these projects that have come forward in the last year or so in this mixed-use designation have had a commercial component attached to them. I can't remember any.
The only one, the Paseo Santa Fe, has a little bit of the retail next to what will be the linear park. But that's the only one I can think of at the top of my head that has had that.
And the G8 project that...
The GA project, that's true. Well, there will be the new project at that corner, or that whole block anyways, that will have a true mixed use, or plan to be a true mixed use. So that's a good one. Yep.
Yeah, so we hear this from the public all the time, and the commission, this sentiment of home ownership, condos over apartments, and our role, as I see it on the commission, is we're very limited as to what we can do about that, and this is more of a staff and council issue with this, what the general plan is right now, and if people in the public aren't happy with that, if you think there's certain aspects that aren't working correctly, or if the pendulum is swung too far in one direction and it's time to rein it back. I mean, these unfortunately, I think it's hard for a lot of people, the public and the commission, to see that and to not really be able to do anything about it. And I'm just blowing off steam, I guess, or just pointing that out. I think everybody realizes that, but it's hard, when the public says, we want condos here, and well, that's not much us as a commission can do about that.
That's true. Yep.
Commissioner Garrettson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Is there any way that we could discuss that when that keeps coming up? I don't care if we have to discuss it every meeting, at least outline what we can do and can't do. So,
Commissioner Garrettson, we have looked into the issue of whether it's practical or lawful to require condominiums rather than apartments where the two developments would be functionally and physically the same, except for one mandating it be owned. There are concerns about that. One is actually forcing the developer to complete the condominium process and then sell off. There's also the possibility that individuals could simply buy the condominiums and then rent them out, which definitely can happen. A condominium development with a high level of rental units might actually have certain problems that would exceed that of an apartment under single management. There's also issues regarding fair housing laws. And so I can't say that it would be an impossibility, but we have concerns about whether making that change would deliver what the commission or others would think it would do, and also the legality of actually mandating a condominium product when an apartment product would be physically the same. There's a certain affordable housing, not affordable, targeted, we have a housing element that's supposed to serve different groups, and the condominium would preclude a certain level of moderate income targets, for instance, that need to be achieved. And I think the rentals already are quite high. I don't know if you know what the rentals would be, but the rents are far from affordable to many people.
So, Mr. Stone, would it be in the best interest of the audience, the community, when we are discussing these and we would like to see the condo thing, would it be in their best interest to keep in our forefront and maybe make the part of our discussion of, but if you've got 41 separate owners that you have to try to work with versus, having this as an apartment complex with a really structured management system that you actually have more controls being an apartment than you would. Do you think that would, and commissioners, do you think that would help when Mr. Stone mentioned that, and I thought 41 children versus, having an apartment where you have one manager that is running the whole thing versus 41 different, people, made a lot of sense to me that maybe it is better to be an apartment than to be a condo. And I do understand and I would rather have owners than renters, somewhat. Where am I going with that?
Well, I wasn't suggesting that we as a commission try to change anyone's mind about what's better for the community or better for their neighborhood or the pros and cons of the different aspects. It was mostly it's a zoning item that I noticed that we've got this so-called mixed use that's not being utilized as mixed use. So it seems flawed to me. And so is there an opportunity to do something with that to require a certain percentage of commercial in a mixed use zoning if that was the intent of the mixed use zonings to have commercial in it, or was as a commissioner, if a project comes before me, I feel like if it's meeting the city requirements, and if it looks good, and if it's done all the right things, I can't deny it just because it's apartments. That's not my job. So,
my comment was more that we're hearing it from the audience saying, why not condos? Why not condos? And if we were saying back to them, a good management plan in apartments actually has more control over what's happening in the complex than if they were condos. That was kind of where I was going.
It's almost as if we had a prepared statement. Whatever we decide is that right position to take, but to inform the general public about parameters and what we think about, and it would clear up a lot of the discussion.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Commissioner Rossler brought it up today about a management plan, a parking management plan, and about apartments that are well managed. We as a community have little trouble with versus those that are not well managed. And then there's, multiple families living in a one-bedroom apartment. So, Commissioner Rossler started that, and so I'm wondering if we need to just keep that in our in front and mimic it back out.
One additional comment on if it does go condominium, there will be a homeowners association, and that association will be responsible for managing the site. So I think my experience in doing this for 30 years, it all goes down to management of whatever residential development there is. So.
It would seem to me if we had some sort of prepared statement that we always provide when we have these discussions, it would serve the general public much better than everybody coming at it from a different perspective, and we're sitting here knowing what our limitations are and knowing that a lot of the concerns they're going to express, it's out of our hands. So I think some sort of a prepared statement covering whatever these issues are could be very beneficial. I don't know what that statement would be, but
well, I think when the public comes up, they all want condominiums and don't want the apartments, and then they hear half of the commission say the same thing, and then the item is over, and it goes away, and it's apartments. The public must be thinking, what's going on here? We just said we didn't want apartments. Half the commission said they didn't want apartments, and so something. I don't know how to inform them that maybe their fight is with on up the ladder if they want to make some sort of change in that department.
Yeah, I think what happens is if it's a development where there is actually a site plan review, And it would not be an appropriate condition, since the use is lawful. The review process can't dictate which of the lawful uses are going to be selected by the developer for their private development. Instead, really what the Commission would have authority to address would be issues such as you are addressing: the design, setbacks, aesthetics, the practical issues regarding the parking, for instance, all those issues.
But what about the issue that Commissioner Carroll brought up about mixed use supposed to be mixed use, and we're not getting that?
I think that they brought up an interesting point, and my experience in the Otay Ranch shows me some of this. There are certain locations, especially around transit, where there is pedestrian activity, and that you need that pedestrian activity for a true mixed-use ground floor commercial. And this may, in my opinion, this was a good location for it because it was between Fraser Farms and the movie theater, two commercial anchors. So I hate to start this with staff, but maybe we need a review of our mixed-use designated land and decide specifically. In my mind, downtown, South Santa Fe, definitely mixed use. You got to have ground floor, and you can have residential above it. The one down on South Melrose, the property's far enough back off. The commercial was far enough back off the Melrose that it wasn't visible from the street, and the commercial died. So perhaps that location wasn't appropriate, and going to residential without having to go back through a zone change is probably appropriate. So maybe when we have one of our workshops in the future this year, maybe a review of mixed use would be appropriate at that time.
That might be one reason that those two pads sit vacant for 15 years.
Yeah.
We wanted restaurants there, and I think that would have been great, but it didn't happen. And there's not that much traffic that actually goes between where Sinopolis and Fraser Farms. People don't drive on that road as much as, occasionally they do, but it's not a road that is traveled a lot, I don't believe.
Be interesting to see what the traffic study says.
That would be something very interesting to see. Maybe we ought to have more traffic reports in what we get.
Well, I know I try to avoid Fraser Farms if I have to. If I'm not going to Fraser Farms, I don't want to drive through that, even if it's a shortcut, just because of the traffic.
Yeah.
I think there are unintended consequences, perhaps, that we're facing with the mixed use and how that came about, because nobody's going to deny the fact that we're not really getting mixed use or true mixed use. And I think from the staff's perspective, it was more to provide flexibility when we implemented the zone in the way that we currently have it, so that we wouldn't lock in that picture that it has to be the retail of the first floor and then office above it or residential up above or what have you. And it was mainly to provide the opportunity for the applicant or developer to come in and be perhaps more creative. But unfortunately, I think the unintended consequence is that we're getting all the residential projects coming through within these mixed-use zones. So I think from staff's perspective, perhaps there should be more discussion in thinking, do we need to go back and reassess it? And perhaps it's not working the way we thought it would work, obviously, for whatever reasons, how it's coming about, I guess. So, but it's a tough one because it's either you constrict it to a certain recipe and nobody buys it, or you open it up and there's way too much choice and you don't get what you wanted in the first place. So, anyways.
First step in the planning process is reevaluating the plan. So
correct. That's a long-term process, and I think maybe that's the opportunity to do that.
Commissioner Looney, your light's on? Nothing? Commissioner Jackal? Commissioner Rossler?
I've said enough.
Student commissioners? Neither? Okay. Commissioner Garrettson?
A couple of meetings ago, Commissioner Jackal had talked about the potential of having balloons or something that would give us an idea of how high these buildings are relative to the rest of the community. And I would like to pursue that. I don't know if it's something that the city could do, we could have the developer do, or would it be legal if I put 4 balloons up on private property so I would know how high they are. And I was thinking specifically about the one behind Burger King. You know, sitting at Skybound having a cup of coffee, trying to figure out how high that building would be, and is it going to so much tower over the community that's going to be out of place. So is that something we could do?
So perhaps like a story pole that would identify, like you usually see that in coastal zones because people are so concerned about height and what block is going to block their ocean view or what have you. But that's something that we can look into and see if that can be either part of the process. I'm not sure, but certainly we can.
I think that was a great idea. You look at this property, and if I'm an owner of one of those houses to the east, that's going to be one of the first things I'm going to want to know. Yeah. Is this higher than my elevation, lower? And so I think that would be a great community service, but certainly I would really appreciate it. Great idea.
And I'm thinking it would be a good idea, but it probably wouldn't be a good idea at an early design review when we don't even have a developer who's bought into it yet.
Yeah, I agree. It might be something later on during the discretionary review process when it's a formal project.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time, even early design review, that's going to tell people, you know, how much do I support this? How much do I oppose it? And that would be a major determinant for me.
I've got to do that on my design reviews on my homes. And it's got to be done before the project design is reviewed. The story poles have to be certified by a licensed surveyor that accurately represent the heights and the shapes of the proposed buildings. Yes, it's an additional cost, but it really shows the true picture of what is being proposed. And I think, as we've heard week after week after week, well, gee, I just heard about it. You put story poles up with the flags, yeah. You won't have any problem with the people knowing what's being proposed. And you'll see these seats filled. And so, yes, it's an additional expense. For me to do a house, a 5,000 to 6,000 foot house, it's going to run about $3,000, $4,000. But if we're talking about a multi-million-dollar project, it's a very small investment by the developer to convey to the community what he's really proposing. So I think that should be discussed further at staff level to see if we could get that implemented.
Oh, I think so too. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, especially if the developer would pick up the cost.
Yeah, let me take that back and then we'll discuss it at the staff level and then we'll bring back something or our opinions on it. So,
great. Any other comments? When do we need these back? Oh, when do we need the Form 700s back? 19th?
Oh, that's it.
Okay. Thank you. We're adjourned. 2 originals. Is that why there's 2 packs? Okay, 2 originals. Okay, thank you.